My name is Elwira Lewandowska.
And I'm Małgorzata Raułyk. We are both working here at the University of Bielsko-Biała in the Institute of Neo-Philology. And today we would like to take you on a journey into the world of 21st century poetry.
So let's start with the concept of Instapoetry. And let us try to find the answer to the following conundrum. Is it really a poetry? Should we consider it as being opposed to this traditional understanding of poetry in the area of literary studies? Or is it actually similar in many respects? We do hope that this presentation will give you some answers to this issue. And now Gosia is going to tell you some more about Instapoetry itself.
Okay, so what is Instapoetry? I'm sure you're all familiar with social media and with Instagram. And as you know, Instagram is mostly used to share photos and stories, but it's also used by poets nowadays. Instapoets write and they share very short poems, which can be displayed on the screen on your phone and easily shared. Instapoetry has become extremely popular within the last few years, and we want to tell you something more about the most popular Instapoets.
However, you should be aware that the concept of Instapoetry is quite controversial. It is often criticized due to its simplistic form and the fact that the authors are actually pop stars. So we do hope that this presentation will help you to decide for yourselves whether it is poetry or rather not. Yes. One of the most popular Instapoets nowadays is definitely Rupi Kaur. Her parents emigrated from India and moved to Canada when she was only 3 years old. And since then, since she was a child, she has enjoyed drawing and writing because, as she often says in her interviews, it was her only way of communicating with the world around her. She started to publish her poetry and drawings on social media platforms around 2015 and has become really popular within the last few years. So far, she has published 3 books of poetry titled Milk and Honey, The Sun and Her Flowers, and the newest, Homebody, which were translated into many languages and were listed as international bestsellers for many, many months. In her poetry, she speaks about love, relationships, family, and hardships of everyday life. The language she uses isn't complicated, and her personal tone easily reaches audiences all over the world. At the moment, her Instagram account has about 4 million followers. So the first poem is titled Us. We began with honesty. Let us end in it too.
The second poem doesn't really have a title, but I'm just going to read it to you. I am water, soft enough to offer life, tough enough to drown it away. As you can see, she only uses lowercase letters and periods in her poem. The reason why her poems take this particular form lies in her cultural background. Such an approach to writing originates from her cultural heritage. Punjabi language, which is her parents' mother tongue, only uses lowercase letters. As she stated herself, the letters are treated the same. I enjoy this simplicity. It's symmetrical and straightforward. I also feel there is a level of equality this visuality brings to the word. A visual representation of what I want to see more of within the world, equalness. And now we would like to share with you one of Rupi's poems, Father, in a form of a video clip, and Rupi will read this poem to you in the video.
As a father of 3 daughters, it would have been normal for him to push marriage on us. This has been the narrative for the women in my culture for hundreds of years. But instead, he pushed education knowing it would set us free. In a world that wanted to contain us, he made sure we learned to walk independently.
Another poet who has become a social media favorite is Lang Liuv. She's a novelist and a poet. She was born in a refugee camp in Thailand after her family escaped from Cambodia to flee the Khmer Rouge regime. She grew up in Australia when she started to write and share her poetry on social media. So far, she was able to publish 7 books of poetry and 2 novels. And in her poems, she speaks about relationships and challenges of everyday life. The style of her poetry is quite simple, but her tone remains very emotional. She managed to reach audiences in different corners of the world, and nowadays she is followed by approximately 550,000 followers. We would like to show you a video clip of her poem, Broken Heart.
I know you've lost someone, and it hurts. You may have lost them suddenly.
Unexpectedly. Or perhaps you began losing pieces of them until there was nothing left.
One day there was nothing left. You may have known them all your life, or barely known them at all.
Either way, it is irrelevant. You cannot control the depth of a wound another inflicts upon you.
Which is why I'm not here to tell you that tomorrow will be a new day, or that the sun will go on shining,
or that there are plenty of fish in the sea.
What I will tell you is this. It's okay to be hurting as much as you are. What you're feeling is not only completely valid, but necessary, because it makes you so much more human. And although I can't promise that it'll get better anytime soon, what I can say is that it will
eventually. All you can do is just take your time. Take all the time that you need.
As you can see, and as you could hear, her style is simple, yet very emotional and relatable. The language she uses can be described as plain, similar to the everyday language, which is the source of harsh criticism coming from the academic and literary communities. However, we think that this simplicity of style makes her work easily accessible to large audiences.
Definitely. Okay, there is the last poet that we want to talk about in Insta poetry context, and her name is Cleo Wade. She is American activist, artist, and a writer. Her poems are also very personal, very much engaged, and they tackle various issues like women's rights, Black Lives Matter movement, or national elections. She has become an inspiration for many and has been called, for example, everybody's BFF by the New York Times, the poet of her generation by Time magazine. She has become also one of America's 50 most influential women by Marie Claire and 100 most creative people in business by Fast Company. So as you can see, she is not only a poet, but also a social activist and a businesswoman. Today, we want to show you a very short clip of her poem. She is reading her poem, A Love Note to My Body.
This is called A Love Note to My Body. A love note to my body. First of all, I want to say thank you for the heart you kept beating, even when it was broken, for every answer you gave me in my gut, for loving me, even when I didn't know how to love you, for every time you recovered when I pushed you past our limits, for today, for waking up.
Okay, one of the most important concepts which she comments on is women empowerment. She inspires all of us to love and accept ourselves for who we are. This sort of positive encouragement is definitely something we all need in our lives.
And now we will change a subject a little bit, because Insta poetry is definitely not the only type of poetry we want to talk about today. Spoken word poetry is another type, which is usually performed live in front of an audience. However, it is often published in the form of poetry books as well. It can contain elements of rap, hip-hop, or even jazz music, and its themes revolve around social justice, politics, race, or community. Such poetry is very engaged and personal, and the fact that we can see and listen to the performer adds a lot to this impression that it leaves us with.
Okay, so today we want to introduce you to one of the most popular British spoken word poets, Holly McNish. Holly is a spoken word poet who has been publishing her work since 2012. She has published 5 books of poetry and co-written 1 play. In her poems, Holly comments on various social issues, relationships, or hardships of being a parent. You can find her poetry on Facebook, Instagram, and most importantly on YouTube, where you can find video clips of her poems as well as videos of Holly reading, performing her poetry. Holly travels a lot performing her poems in front of large audiences, and you can see a poster of her international tour in this slide. Today, we want to show you a video of one of her poems. She's performing a poem entitled British National Breakfast.
Invented by a research team. He starts the day with a small glass of orange juice, bought at Sainsbury's, South African produce. Mugs emblazoned with our German bread queen, he sips English breakfast tea, forgetting those are Indian leaves. 1.5 teaspoons each of sugar grain, bought at Asda, Barbadian cane. Husband fries eggs, wife waters wisteria, cooking oil from Italy, heating oil, Nigeria. They swallow 2 pills each to help their bowels and digestion, invented by a research team of US and Indians. Newspapers flick through. Headlines are read, says, more crime, more violence, less hospital beds. She complains to her husband, he complains to his wife. They complain it must be those foreigners ruining their lives. Voting polls open, BNP ticked. Pen bought from Staples, Iranian ink. They drive home on roads laid by Irish Jamaicans. She sprays on her perfume, an Arab invention, complaining about foreigners joining our country, forgetting the source of our dear British money. Desperate for someone to blame for her boredom, she waters the pansies, fertiliser from Jordan. Desperate for someone to blame for his misery, they complain that foreigners are ruining the country. Afternoon nap to TV, both sigh. Made in Sri Lanka, sold from Shanghai. Mumbling that Polish have run to this country, they watch A Place in the Sun repeated from Sunday. Shop down at Asda because the stuff there is cheaper, they complain more British jobs for more British people. Buy 2 for 1 offers from low wages abroad, claiming the price of local farm shops is robbery fraud. They pick up a pizza on the short journey home. Complain British cooking is being pushed to death row. Home on the couch, watch TV all night, complaining that foreigners are ruining their lives. They finish their day with a cup of hot cocoa, beans made in Kenya, profits to Tesco, complaining in bed about closing our borders. They don't learn Spanish and retire to Mallorca.
As you can see, Holly has a very distinctive way of performing her poetry. The tone and rhythm of her work being performed definitely adds this additional layer to the possible ways of interpreting her words. Such charismatic and engaged voices add this important and needed commentary to our everyday reality.
So now it's time to answer the question that we asked at the beginning of our presentation. Is Insta poetry and spoken word actually poetry? Some critics view this style of poetry as a disgrace to real poetry. Others claim that Insta poetry has turned poetry into a capitalist endeavor. The poems are considered emotionless and written to attract followers.
And the people who read such poetry are said to be interested in this idea of fidget spinner poetry, which is fast, short, and easy.
But who can really decide if it is poetry? Is it critics or is it readers? Who can decide about the value of somebody else's work?
Well, you can definitely guess our opinion on the topic, but the rest is up to you to decide.
Yeah, you decide for yourselves.
And now, as our presentation has reached an end, we would also like you to take a quiz on the Kahoot site. So on the slide, there's a hyperlink. You can click on it, and it will take you to the quiz itself. Or you can also type a pin code on Kahooted site. And we hope that the quiz is going to be quite entertaining.
Okay, so thank you very much for watching the presentation. We hope that you lasted till the end. And the last slide shows the sources that we used in our presentation. So thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
That's it.